Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Hope you guys are having a great end to your weekend, ending it here with us. We appreciate you guys being on here as always. Huge hire for Ryan Day and the crew. Another new name to the staff, another guy that's advancing, climbing, and is a rising superstar in the coaching ranks. We'll talk a little bit about him, talk a little bit about the NFL Combine, and some of the stuff that's going on in the Woody Hayes mat drills are going on this past few weeks. So we got a little bit of tidbits on that. Those are very difficult. They are not fun at all. So we're going to get it through what is a mat drill, and also take your questions as always. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, we appreciate you guys being on here each and every night. Again, we are grinding 6-7 days a week. Usually try to stick to 7. Might take a day off here and there, but we've been grinding pretty much full steam ahead into this off season. Obviously, spring ball is a few weeks out. But with the coaching carousel spinning, it has been a lot of great content on here. A lot of great information from our insiders on BuckeyeScoop.com. So we, again, appreciate you guys that are also members of BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not a member there and you want to know where all of the inside information is at first, head over there, join our message board. It's the #1 Ohio State message board by far at this point compared to all of our competition. So we'd love to have you guys join us there. But it's been absolutely spectacular. Also, do a huge favor for us. Please, 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 please give us a follow on Apple Podcasts on your iPhone. Super easy to do. Very quick, very simple. It takes about 15 seconds to do. Completely free. It is an easy way to say thank you for all that we do on here. Again, we love doing it. That is a nice way to thank us and help support the community in a way that costs nothing. So again, we appreciate you guys as always. And also, I will not just let Nevada promote it every time. Our coffee is flying off the shelves. It is fire. The breakfast blend and the black and tan are my two personal favorites, but BuckeyeScoopBrew.com. Head there, check it out. The proceeds go to pay it forward. And if you guys know how much I work, I love me some coffee. So I'm drinking a lot of it, and it's really good stuff. So with that being said, I'm going to bring in Nevada. Nevada is always caffeinated, degenerated, everything else in the world. Between coffee and betting soccer, I don't know what else he needs to keep that heart rate up. But Nevada, how are you today?
Man, I'm doing great. It's been a good gambling day, and it's kind of a low key day, just kind of relaxing, taking care of the dogs, taking care of some chores, and winning some soccer bets over. And the Cavaliers won after being down. I think they were down 18 or 15 with a minute and 20 seconds to go in the third quarter. And despite some of the worst officiating that I've ever seen in the NBA, it's and I don't say this. This is not to disparage them. This is to distinguish them. It was the crew that has 2 female referees, and they were all bad. So it doesn't. This is not a female man thing, but boy, they were bad. This crew, all of them were just so there. There were fouls when people weren't even touched, and I mean, it was just it was the worst officiated NBA game that I've seen in a really, really long time. And the Cavs still managed to win. So go Cavs, go.
Nevada, we're going to get right into it. Tony Washington Jr. is our new, I guess, assistant defensive line coach. He is in the kind of one of the analyst roles where he's not one of the 10 countable coaches that can recruit, but he's a guy that is coming from UCLA, a heavy Chip Kelly influence on here. I always like to say Billy Fessler because like every single coach it seems is like 1 degree from Billy Fessler but Billy Fessler was there last year. Billy Fessler and Tony Washington Jr. were 2 coaches that Chip Kelly hired early in the year last year, January-ish. And then Chip took off for Ohio State. And he brought Billy along as an analyst, but he left poor Tony behind. But now Tony has made the trip across the country from the UCLA Bruins, where he was kind of an outside linebackers edge type coach, to be the assistant D-line coach here. Nevada, your reactions to the hire. Again, he's a guy that actually played against us. He played on the Oregon defensive line when we ran through them in 2014. He was in that game, the national championship game where we won, 42-14 or whatever. It was a massacre. But he actually started with DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead. So he's actually been on the field against us. But he now joins the Ohio State staff. Your thoughts on the hire?
Well, it's funny. He's a name that we've heard before. He was a name that that whole UCLA Oregon kind of connection with Chip Kelly, where Chip Kelly's obviously got his deep Oregon ties even after he left there, and the UCLA ties. This was a name that Chip wanted to bring on, and Allen Clark was in that position, and I think when we were talking about potential hires, potential analysts, assistant coaches, assistant to the assistant general manager, or whatever it would be. This is a guy that Chip's been really, really high on. So when I heard it, I was surprised, but it was not the first time that I heard the name. I guarantee you he got a ringing endorsement from Chip, and I really like him. And Chip likes those guys that are smart, that are kind of the up and comers. And Chip's endorsement, he doesn't really give it out very often, but when he does, generally people have to listen to it. And so this is a name that I was familiar with when he came on to Ohio State, and I know Ohio State's excited about having him. And generally, I don't get too excited about assistant, defensive coach, but this is a good one. This guy's a really good coach. Really relates well to the players. Really big on technique, and I think he's going to be a big add to the Ohio State defensive line room.
Well, the thing about him is he was recruited by Chip Kelly. So, I mean, he was, when Chip took over as head coach, this is the guy that he recruited. He's from Los Angeles, kind of your neck of the woods, Nevada, Rancho Cucamonga, where I know you had a team, I believe. But he was at Oregon from 2010 to 14. So his last game was as a senior versus the Buckeyes, where obviously we beat him in the national championship game. And he's got a little bit of a different path. He was in the NFL for a couple years, kind of had one of those, those bounce around, was hurt, 15, 16, 17, 18 offseason guy, practice squad guy, never made an active roster, but he was kind of hanging out. And that's like, it's kind of a perilous position because you don't make a ton of money as a practice squatter. And in the offseason, you're not paid at all, but he had some injuries and, but like everyone else, the game processes you out, then you got to figure out what to do. And you're like 25 years old and you're unemployed and you're like, well, what do I do? So he wanted to be a GA at Nebraska, and then he got back to Oregon. So again, like a lot of these guys, they all dream of coming back home, and it might be in a capacity that might not be what you want it to be. Like you might want to be, well, I want to be the D-line coach, or like Brian Hartline wanted to be the wide receivers coach, but he started off as a quality control coach. And but you get your foot in the door doing something. And he was the director of player development, actually under Mario Cristobal. So when they smashed us in the horseshoe, he was on staff as director of player development, which is kind of an entry-level spot where you're basically kind of like a nanny. Like that's kind of what like CJ Barnett is for us now, where you're like, you got to run around and make sure kids know how to get to class and make sure they don't get in trouble and make sure that they turned all their books in, whatever, like all the little dumb things that you have to do as a player development guy, make sure that they know how to get to the weight room on time. And it's a lot of chasing kids down to make sure that they're at the right place where they're supposed to be, and putting out fires all over campus when they do dumb things. So it's not a great job, but it's a job where you can earn a lot of street credit if you're good at it, because you're doing a billion different things, and a lot of it is stuff that isn't in your job description. So you're kind of helping out doing whatever. So starts off there, and then after he obviously does a good enough job there, after a year, and this is the interesting thing, is that this is when the transition begins, because Mario Cristobal took off after 2021. He was a goner. He went to Miami. So this is a guy that was good enough to get retained, which again, that's something that I lived when I was on staff with Trussell, and then Luke Fickell takes over in the middle of the summer. But when Luke Fickell gets not fired, but whatever you want to call it, demoted. I mean, he doesn't get to stay as the head coach, and he returns to being a DC for Urban. Like, there's a lot of us in there that have no idea if we're going to get kept, because Urban, I mean, they're getting rid of a lot of people. I mean, the other GA that I was with got fired because they wanted to bring in, Tom Herman wanted to bring in Drew Marriger, who's actually the tight ends coach at Oregon now. But Tom had his guy that was like his protege, and he wanted to bring him as a GA, and so they moved on west, and they kept me, which was great. But that's just kind of the thing that he loved. So he got kind of promoted to being assistant D-line coach, which is like an analyst where he couldn't coach on the field. Then an outside linebackers coach, and then he goes to UCLA last year, and he's a defensive end or defensive line and outside linebackers coach, but he was kind of like the assistant. He wasn't the full-time guy, but he helped out. And again, when they lifted this all changed honestly when they changed the rule about how many coaches you can have on the field. Because before, when you're the assistant defensive line coach or the like what he was in 23 when he's the outside linebackers coach, he's like an analyst that can't coach. But now every single guy on the field is allowed to coach. And again, I've talked about big rules. Obviously, NIL has been a huge change. That is one of the biggest changes in the history of college football, that you can have infinite coaches. Because like, you want to talk about like creating like a canyon, a Grand Canyon between the haves and have nots. Like when Ohio State can hire not just Tyler Bowen, but they go out, they get, Charlie Dickey, or they go out and get Marcus Johnson. Those are two good line coaches. I mean, Marcus Johnson coached in the SEC for multiple years at Mississippi State, and he knows Ole Miss. And Charlie Dickey was at Oklahoma State as their O-line coach last year. Like you basically have 3 full-time O-line coaches now. So you don't have to have some 22-year-old grad assistant who's trying to figure out how to coach the O-line when you can bring in, 2 stone cold guys who've run rooms. And again, why is that important? Why should you care? Why should anybody care? Well, because say Tyler Bowen like knocks it out of the park and is a Brian Hartline level recruiter and a huge in the running development and the rest of the whole 9 yards, and he gets a head coaching job maybe after this year or maybe in 2 years. I don't know. If you have, if you really like what you've seen from Charlie Dickey or Marcus Johnson, then you could just promote one of them. Like, you don't have to go out and, go throw it all out there and say, okay, let's see if we can find a new line coach or whatever position. Like if Brian Hartline becomes a head coach after this season, and they like what Devin Jordan's been doing for the last 5 or 6 years, you could promote Devin to be the wide receivers coach. You could. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's what Ryan wants to do, but again, most of the time we kind of say tongue in cheek, like, I'm not going to get too excited about, a guy who's a coach who's not one of the top 10 countable coaches, or he's a analyst or whatever. But I mean, if I'm like this guy and if I'm Tony Washington Jr., I'm looking at Ryan Day's track record of promoting from within, like, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Because I mean, starting with like Corey Dennis, James Laurinaitis, Brian Hartline, Billy Fessler, I mean, there's been a lot of it. And so that's a nice little carrot for some of these guys when they're like, oh, I'm here, but there's no way that they won't cast the net out and see who they can get. But I don't know if Ryan, for better or worse, like I think that he likes having his guys in the building. And, when you're Tony Washington Jr., like every day is an audition to take Larry Johnson's job next year or in 2 years or in 3 years or in 5 years or whenever, because that job will come open at some point. Now, again, I hope Larry Johnson's here as long as I'm alive. I really think he does a great job. But, Ryan, I mean, this is an audition. Like if I'm him, I'm like, man, I'm going to get there early and work hard and, not try to supersede Larry, but try to, do everything that he does great. And then maybe some stuff that he's not as great at, maybe, enhance and improve it. Nevada, what are your thoughts? Because again, I think that, again, the big change that allows all these guys to coach now, I mean, every day is a job audition for, like a true job audition. Because, again, before, and I'm sure that we had guys that were illegally coaching, behind the scenes. I get it. But, before, like, you were running a risk of, with the way our compliance was militant, like you could get zapped for that. But what are your thoughts on kind of the new way and the way that Ryan has just loved to promote guys from within?
Well, I mean, Ryan's developing a reputation for identifying and having some good young talent right now, and I think he likes those young guys. I mean, it's always just it's funny because some guys like to have grizzled veterans, some guys like to have people they're familiar with. Ryan likes the kind of that mentorship type of thing with the younger coaches. Kind of feels like he's got a chance to kind of keep guys around, develop them up. And I'm sure that Ryan wants to develop kind of his coaching tree and, kind of plant his roots out there. Everybody kind of likes doing that. I liked it when I was in the sports business, had a bunch of guys that kind of went out to become marketers and other teams. But I think he really likes that and really enjoys it. And I'm sure this won't be the last type of guys he's doing with, because it certainly has been his MO in the past.
Yeah, I think that it's really beneficial now because of how, like I said, these guys literally being allowed to coach, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. When you can let guys legally run drills and legally, And I'm not saying like, we didn't do it or other teams didn't do it or whatever. Like, I mean, it's a really gray space, but I just know having been at Ohio State, like our compliance department was not our friend. I mean, they would turn us in and turn in violations for just about anything, any dumb thing that they could think of. So you'd run the risk of running a foul with them, which was fine, whatever. And we'd have to deal with stuff that frankly SEC schools never had to deal with. But I'm excited for this hire. Again, I think that he's a West Coast guy, he's an LA guy. So again, I don't know what ties he has. I don't know what areas he's got expertise in recruiting. And frankly, I don't know what intel he has on anyone on the UCLA roster that might hit the portal. But I think that this is a kid. You got to get excited about some of these guys, and he's young, and these guys are, they're usually here for a year or two, and they try to do what they can to grow in the program. But I think it's an exciting add to the staff. I like getting guys that have kind of a perspective. Again, he was at Oregon for 2 years, so he knows. Not that we need help versus Dan Lanning and Oregon's vicious defense after we shredded them in the Rose Bowl, but it never hurts to have some guys that have some intel defensively. Again, also, Carlos Loughlin coming over didn't hurt us either. But I'm excited for this. So, well, Nevada, the combine has now wrapped up. Ohio State, I think in general, pretty big winners. Any thoughts, any broad thoughts on what went on at the combine? Most guys, I don't think we had a single guy outside of Trey and Quinshon run the 40. Oh, no, Denzel does. So we had 3 of our speed guys run the 40. The rest of them took it off. Most guys did position work that could. Obviously, the O-line was a little different with Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin, who both could not work out today. But I thought it was a good show by the Buckeyes. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, they showed up. What I think it says about the Ohio State guys is they're competitive. I mean, the fact that they came out and went through the stuff despite going all the way through to the end of January and not having really a bunch of time to prepare, and obviously it's funny because I feel like Pat McAfee's now my spirit animal when it comes to Will Howard, because he loves himself some Will Howard, and people are asking him, hey, is Will Howard like your like you get like some financial interest? And he's like, no, I just love the kid. And that's kind of how I feel about Trey Henderson and Quinshon and Will Howard. I love the fact that those guys went out there and put it on the line. And Trey and Quinshon both tested well, so they certainly helped their kid. I'm sure they interviewed well because those guys are articulate and just they're very thoughtful young men. And then Will went out there and threw, and went through some of the agility drills. And I again, I can't imagine he did anything but help himself in terms of doing it. And one of my favorite things was there was an interview with Emeka. What they were asking him about the best attributes of the best OSU wide receivers of all time. And he was talking about them, and like Emeka, obviously, he's not a guy, like he's not from Ohio, but he's a guy that's very familiar with the history of Ohio State wide receivers. He was talking about the strength of a David Boston and the hands of a Mike Thomas, and I mean, it was just kind of the coolness of a Chris Olave. He's just kind of going right down the list, and it was just kind of fun to see, because you just see how strong the culture is there, and the great history. All over the team, but certainly in that wide receiver room, and to have a Mecca talking, and some team is going to get them a gem in a Mecca, because a Mecca is Jackson Smith and Jigba, part 2. I mean, if you just want an all-pro that does everything the right way, and is or Pro Bowl, whatever I don't know exactly what attributes JSN got this year, but he had a really good year, and I mean, Emeka is going to be that guy, and it was funny. They were talking to him, and he was just complimenting some of the other guys. And McAfee said they asked the 10 Ohio State players. They asked if you could bring one teammate with you, you're the next level. Who would it be? And 9 of the 10 said Will Howard. So, which, I mean, again, just what a great group of kids. It's no mistake, and it was no accident that they won the national championship. If you could ever win a national championship with talent and culture, it was this year, because it was the talent that got us the championship, but it was the culture that saw us through the difficult times and pulled it together after the Michigan game. and got us through there. And it's just so much fun seeing those guys at the draft. And I've said this before, but the draft would have been so depressing if we'd have lost. So if we'd have lost, it would have been, wow, look at all this talent. How could this team not have won it? How could this team not have done any of their stated goals? Not a Big Ten championship, not a beating Michigan, not a national championship, and then they go win everything. And so, yeah, the NFL draft is going to be absolutely a celebration of Ohio State football. And for you and I, it's going to be a personal celebration because all we got to do is get 14 guys drafted, 13 to push, 14 for $2,000, and I think that I don't see any way that doesn't happen. I just don't see any, because Ty's going to get drafted. Ty Hampton's going to get drafted by somebody, and the only way would be if Seth McLaughlin went through the entire draft, and maybe if they thought that his injury was so bad that he wasn't drafted at all, and I think we could still win. So yeah, I'm excited for draft day.
I don't know how a guy who was a consensus All-American center could go undrafted. I mean, I know that like it's an Achilles, but like, I mean, you take there's some bad players. You're throwing some darts in the 7th round. I mean, Ty's going to get drafted. I mean, he had a fantastic combine. He looked great in position work. Obviously, I think Ty Lake's a 1st-round pick. Jack's probably a 2nd-round pick. JT's probably a 2nd-round pick. It'll be interesting to see how Cody Simon runs. I think he's a guy that I don't know how he doesn't go in the 4th or 5th round, in my opinion. I don't know how Tommy Eichenberg can go, in that 5th-ish round area, and then Cody is in that same kind of area, because I think Cody's a better athlete than Tommy. And both really good players, but I don't see that big of a difference between the two of them. Denzel probably 2nd round, I think. Jordan Hancock probably 2nd, 3rd round. Lathan, I think Lathan will be 6th, 7th round. Lathan's biggest issue is he's had a lot of injuries, and again, that's just facts. Like, I mean, when these teams do these medical combine checks, and I mean he's had some real serious injuries, but he's a hell of a player. Like, I mean, I think Lathan is probably the most underrated player in the country this past year. Really played great for us. I mean, Trey and Quinshawn probably both 2nd round. Trey might be able to get into the 1st, or Quinshawn. But I'd say 1st, 2nd round for either of them. Will Howard, I don't know. I mean, he could go anywhere from the 2nd to the 5th. I have no clue. Emeka 1st, easy. Donnie 1st, 2nd. Seth probably, I'd say that 5th through 7th range. And Josh Simmons is a 1st rounder all day. And then you've got G. Scott and Josh Fryer. Both likely won't get drafted. They could. I mean, again, we've seen crazier stuff happen, and just because a guy doesn't get drafted doesn't mean it's the end of days. Because it's like I always tell people, like, Andrew Norwell didn't get invited to the combine, and he didn't get drafted, and he became the richest guard in NFL history. Like, when he signed his deal in Jacksonville, he became the richest guard in NFL history. So I mean, just because you're sad and depressed because you didn't get to go there doesn't mean, a lot of these NFL guys are idiots, and a lot of them, I wouldn't let them evaluate the tread on my tires, let alone anything else. But they left Norwell out of the combine, so it's just kind of a starting point. And there's a lot of guys that'll go to the combine that won't play at all. Like, I mean, Mine Williams was a combine invite, and he didn't even sign a contract ever. Like, I think he might have gone to one rookie minicamp, and I'm not picking on Mayan, but he was like the first running back to go to the combine and not sign a contract at all. Because again, you can get drafted, but then there's also every team signs 15 to 20 undrafted free agents on top of the draft class. So your draft class is usually 25, 30 guys between your draft picks and your undrafted free agents. And so mine didn't even get one of those, which again, that was a little surprising. I mean, I knew mine wasn't a good athlete and couldn't run real well, but I figured he'd at least get a shot in a training camp. So I saw bad players in the league when I was in training camp. I'm going to throw on my guy for a little bit, just because, we talk about the second portal window and evaluating some guys, and 77 here is a guy that we broke this film down 2 years ago. It was after spring, and I had to go scrape together some Josh Simmons film, and I remember watching him, and I'm like, you know what? He's a really good mover. He's really athletic. He's really you can tell it is pass protection that he's really confident. and it's funny, and I don't know if she still does because he's not here, but like, we found out that Josh's mom loves the show and watches the show all the time, which I thought was really cool. So shout out to Josh Simmons' mom. But I'm so happy for this kid because he is the definition of like what Ohio State can do for you. Because again, you see a lot of raw talent on here, and this is why I remember you can go back and watch the tape when we were watching this guy, and like, he's not playing the greatest competition, but he played Utah and he played some good teams, and I mean he can move real well. I mean, you get him with Mickey Marotti and get him a little bit stronger. Like you can see the talent. Like here he is just in a one-on-one pass pro, just real easy mover, ultra quick out of his set, and I mean there's talk that he could be a top 10 pick. So again, it's just one of those things where I don't want to say it's like a sage thing, but I remember watching this tape and I was like, he looks pretty good. And when Justin Fry goes on this kid, I'm like, well, his family's livelihood depends upon him being read on these evaluations. And I was like, I could see it. I mean, I've seen guys that couldn't move or guys that were way worse than this out there. And, again, when you're watching this stuff, you're generally just looking at the movement skills. You're not looking at who's he going against or, sometimes like obviously you want him to win the rep, but if he doesn't win the rep, but he's working on a different type of technique, like it's not the end of the world. But he's smooth here. So again, this is just something that I dug up out of the archives because I really like his potential. I think that he's going to be probably, if you put a gun in my head, he's probably going to be the second or third tackle taken. I think he's the best tackle in the draft, but I just think that with the injury and the kid from Texas who's a little bit taller, could go ahead of him. But I like Josh better than any of these guys, and he's really got a ton of upside because I mean, you look at his tape from last season to this season. I mean, it was a seismic leap. And so what's he going to do? Again, he's only 22. He's a fourth-year junior that went pro. What's he going to do when he hits that next level of NFL training and his knee gets stronger? But yeah, like it's funny when you look at some of the stuff because this is the offseason, so we always got to audit what we were talking about this time last year, and we just got Seth McLaughlin, and I mean people hated picking up Seth McLaughlin. I mean, hated it. And the fun thing about running a message board is you can see all of the old comments, and same way people hated the Josh Simmons pickup, but look how those turned out. So again, big credit to our personnel department, and really a lot of credit to Justin Fry because like Justin. People say he's like this terrible recruiter, and I'm like, well, does Josh Simmons not count at all? Does Seth McLaughlin not count at all? Like, some of these guys that really came on down the stretch, like Carson Hinsman and Luke Montgomery and Tegra, and like, did none of those guys count? I guess I don't know. Nevada, your thoughts on that? Because again, I love watching this old film. I remember doing this episode, and I was like, I can see it. Like he didn't have stars. And again, when he was coming out, and again, I don't know what offers are real, but on the one recruiting service, he had a Georgia offer. And I was like, well, I could see it, but like, if you're, is it a real offer? Is it a fake offer? I don't know. It says Georgia, but maybe there's maybe it's like the Georgia that's in, the overseas that has a girls soccer team. But Nevada, your thoughts on some of the O-line stuff? Because our O-line has really been fantastic. What are your thoughts?
Well, one, I think it's a great point. Like when you're evaluating a position coach, you've got to talk about their recruiting of high school players and their recruiting of portal players, because those are two. I won't say they're equally important, but they're kind of equally important. And certainly you can't leave one out of the equation, if you're talking about that. And in terms of Josh Simmons, I remember vividly because it's funny because I don't know. I defer to you on all things offensive linemen, certainly, because you know a couple things about that. But I remember you calling. I remember this vividly. You're like, man, I really like this Josh Simmons. He's an easy mover, man. This kid really's got good movements. And I'm like, wow, maybe it was the first positive thing that I had heard about the pickup was from you, Colin, talking about that, and it always kind of stuck with me. But no, yeah, kudos to the personal guys, because they didn't just pick his name out of a hat. They went out and they got him, and they put him in there, and he did the job. And now, like you said, he's got I mean, if he's not a top 10 pick, top 15, top whatever, he's going to be a first round pick in the NFL draft for a guy that could have gone to stayed at San Diego State, and I'm really not sure what his draft prospects would have been. So this guy is an absolute poster child for the portal, coming to Ohio State, for OSU development, in general, and for offensive line in particular. But yeah, and a great kid, and amazing to think about how good our team would have been, had he stayed, healthy this year. Seth hadn't fallen down the stairs carrying a TV as well. But then we have the next guys come in and do it too. So the offensive line's doing a lot of things right, and setting us up really well for 2025 with some experience on the inside.
Yeah, and like here's a nice clip of him moving. So this is a little tunnel screen, and this is our our squad right here. So here's Josh and Donnie, and this is kind of when we were kind of the full strength line that we dreamed of, the one we smashed Iowa on this day. But this is a little, like you kind of fake a inside zone step, and then you release out to go get the corner, and like again, the way he's moving isn't real natural for a guy that's 315 pounds, and and he bullies the corner, and Donnie does a nice job getting up to the next level. I think we put the ball on the ground. I don't know if we recovered that or not, but it's like you just watch this stuff. He's real physical. He's tough. He pins the guy here, and really he's really good technically, which again I think that has a lot to do with Justin. You tell he was coached in high school. Seals the guy up real nice and easy. Like I love watching his tape. Like I just think that a lot of the stuff he does is maddening to competition, just because he's so light. And here he is in the run game, mauling a guy. Again, this is all him. Like, I mean, we're running a little. This is like a little. Yeah, it's kind of like an RPO thing, but it's like a full zone. Everyone's zoning. Again, we got a nice easy edge right here. Handoff. I don't think there's an RPO tag because these guys are taking it pretty easy. Like these guys aren't exactly flying off the ball, so there's not much of a look there. But Josh pries this thing open with this end here, and that ends in a tough spot. He's head up, and Josh just crowbars him out of there, and looks good. Here he is versus the Oregon guys that were good. Mateo, both those ones are real good. Again, this is such an underrated little move here to get to the second level, but again, this is something that you learn, or the key to this place, he has to get up to the second level and seal this guy. So the one thing that can screw this up is if the defensive end gets his hand on you. So what does he do? He uses this little rip right here, because this guy's trying to put his hand on his outside shoulder, and he rips right through there. You can see the little rip with his arm. He gets his hand off of him, and I mean, just as easy as can be, gets up to the second level. Like, this isn't a super hard block, but you got to be a good athlete here. And then he stays with the guy, seals him up, guys out of the play, and again, it splits it for a long touchdown. So again, like, that's the funny thing, and I mean this, like, as much as people complain about us not getting Kenyatta Goodwin and David Sanders Jr. and whoever else, like, I mean, we found this kid in the portal. We found Seth McLaughlin in the portal. There's two All-Americans we found in the portal, and I think that trend is going to continue. I think that our left tackle is ranked as a top 50-ish draft prospect for next year. Ethan Onianwa. I mean, he is humongous, and gave up pressures on like 2% of the passes that he was in for last year, pass protecting. So I mean, he's a really good pass block. Now again, it's going to be a massive level jump going from Rice in that competition to Ohio State, but he's got ability, and he's a guy that if he would have come out in the draft, probably been drafted the first 3 rounds just off of his size and his upside and his strength and speed. And he's a guy that he's a leaner version of DeWand, I think, and frankly, I think he's probably a more focused version of DeWand. I mean, this kid's got a serious major, and he's a real sharp kid. So I don't know. I mean, I'll take those kids all day. Real excited about it. Nevada, any other thoughts? And we can dig into some super chats.
No, just I always say be excited about every potential kid. Well, that's true for portal kids as well as kids that were and the portal kids you could probably be more excited about, because I mean our hit rate on portal kids is pretty high. I mean we've had some misses. We've had the Victor Cutler, we've had the Taiwan Malones, but in general, the kids that they brought in through the portal have been big time contributors. And you look at last year, I mean, Caleb Downs, Seth McLaughlin, Will Howard, and I'm sure I'm missing some other guys, but some key guys, some guys we don't win the national. We don't have a national championship hanging in the rafters without those guys, without the portal, and without some great general managership and player development identification. So kudos to us. We always say we're always fair. When they're bad, we call them out, and when they're good, they get the cookies. So cookies to them because they did a heck of a job and delivered us a national championship.
Yep. Dan Welch, thank you for the $1, and thank you for also being a Scoop Ultra member. Appreciate you. A question. Try to toss that in the chat, but I appreciate you, my friend. The Doodah Man, Kirk. Thanks for being an Ultra member, and thank you for the 10. Kirk, you are the GM of the Cincinnati Bengals. What position are you looking for with the first pick? Nevada, I don't know if you follow the Bengals at all, but if you have any thoughts, what are your thoughts?
Well, when are they picking? First of all, when are the Bengals picking? What spot are they picking in? So I can give you an accurate pick.
Well, I mean, they were close to making the playoffs, right? So they got to be in the 20s. I don't know exactly where. I'm literally trying to look that up on the fly right now.
Yeah,
I have no clue.
Yeah, I thought they were like around like 17 or 18 or something like that.
Hang on. 19, 17. There you go. Mel Kiper has them taking, and this would be a whale of a pick, Mikael Williams, outside linebacker from Georgia, because he is a freak of nature. And then going right after him is Tyler Booker, guard from Georgia, Jahad Campbell, linebacker from Bama, Colson Loveland, tight end from Michigan, Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. Nevada, your thoughts?
I'm taking Emeka. I'm doing the Kansas City Chiefs thing of something. I'm just going to load up on offensive weapons for Joe Burrow, and just make other teams kind of stop us, and we'll pick up enough defense through free agency and later in the draft. But I literally I would go get Emeka. I really would, and I just make other teams try to guard all these guys.
Yeah, I mean it's hard not to go with that because like looking around, there's just not. So in Mel Kiper's mock draft, since I have this pulled up, they have the Browns taking Cam Ward for all you Browns fans out there. Abdul Carter going first. Josh Simmons going 10th overall. They have this is hilarious. They have Ashton Jeanty going 6th overall to the Raiders, which I think is insane. Josh Simmons going 10 overall to the Bears. And then Mecca falls to the Steelers at 21. Nevada, with Mecca, would you end up re-signing T. Higgins, or do you let him walk and make Mecca the number 2?
I'd let him walk because I think you're gonna have to pay him too much money. I think the key in the NFL is having those guys that are on their rookie contracts and keeping them as long as you can. And when they became too expensive, you move them on and you go on to the next guy, because I think that Emeka would be every bit as productive as T. Higgins for a fraction of the price. And so, I spend that money elsewhere, but I'd go get Emeka because Emeka's can't miss. And who's your best player on your team? Is Joe Burrow. That's the guy you're building around. So why not give Joe Burrow another weapon?
I think that's the path I would go. I know that the fan base would hate it, but I just don't know how you're supposed to win when you spend, you give Jamar Chase like $35 million a year, and then you give T. Higgins like $20 million a year or so. I mean, $25 million maybe. I mean, I don't know what he wants, but I mean, I'd guess it's at least 20, and Chase is going to want 35. So you're looking at $55 million a year for 2 receivers, which is. It's tough. I mean, in a great game, those guys might touch the ball 20, 25 times if they have 10 and 15 catches respectively, or 10 and 10, or however you want to dice it. So that's a lot, especially when you're paying Joe Burrow 50. You got 100, basically you have 100 million between 3 players, that's all on one side of the ball, where if you let T. Higgins walk, then you can, get a Mecca. And again, well, he be as good as T. Higgins right away? I mean, might be, or it might take a few games for him to get up to speed. But I mean, that cap hit is going to be, Mecca 17, his cap hit's going to be, 6 or 7 million instead of 20-ish million. So that other 13, 14 million you can use to spend on defense, which has been their issue for a long time. I'm sure people want me to say, address the secondary, address the defense, because their defense is horrific. Do they need another pass rusher? Can they resolve things with Trey Hendrickson? I don't know. I mean, that's got to be the billion-dollar question. Obviously, everybody wants to keep investing in the offensive line, but they've spent a lot of capital on that O-line. I mean, God, they've spent a lot on the left tackle, on the interior guys. So, I mean, I don't know. But that's kind of where I'm at. I think that I think you got to let Higgins walk. And I know that the fan base is going to hate it, but that's just part of the gig, man. I mean, when you've got that kind of money tied into two receivers, man, that is, I mean, you got to kind of look at what wins. Like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown both make a lot of money. But neither of them are making 35 million. Like Chase is going to want to be the highest paid receiver in the history of the game. So you're looking over the Jefferson deal. And I mean, it's going to be a humongous number. So, but I take Mecca again, clean character, easy, fan favorite. Like, if you're gonna let T. Higgins walk, I think the easiest giant stick of deodorant that you could do to, cover up that stench is to get Emeka, who's an Ohio State kid who's can't miss, and he'll be, fantastic at every level of the organization. So that's my opinion. I know that Bengals fans are probably going crazy in the chat because I said that, but I don't know. Like, I don't know how you could go wrong picking Emeka Egbuka, but this is my opinion. Adam, thank you for the 5. Appreciate you, my friend. Rewatching the Texas game right now. Can we compare JJ's effort on the pick to Marv's effort on the INT? Oh, God. I mean, Marv gave no effort. Let me see if I can find the JJ pick play. Marv gave no effort, and I was very critical of that. And again, I know everybody's big Marvin Harrison fans, but Marvin couldn't have cared less when he ran that lazy slant and it got jumped. And again, I get Marvin is the greatest receiver and the greatest human being of all time. I get it, but he couldn't have cared less. Could have played lazier, and no one's going to call him out because everybody wants to, be in the good graces of everybody. But I thought it was complete garbage, and it was lazy, and he could have cared less about Michigan or the game, and he's trying to save himself, whatever. But again, it doesn't matter. Great player, great career, great everything. But Nevada, your thoughts on JJ versus the pick? I'm trying to find the clip to see if I can get it.
Well, if you want to see another great JJ effort, and this is one he actually didn't get into play, but he tried. Go run the Quinshawn run, the breakaway run where Quinshawn broke away against Notre Dame in the college football playoff, and JJ is running, and JJ is like 15 yards behind him, and he starts sprinting to try to get into play to try to provide back. Now he didn't get there, but that one stuck with me. Of all the plays I saw last year, I was like, man, that kid is really trying to do all he can to kind of get in there. It was an unheralded effort, and like I said, it didn't bear any fruit because he was just so far behind. But he was sprinting, man. JJ was trying to do his thing.
Do you remember what quarter that play happened in?
That Notre Dame game, that would have been in the like the second half, like the first drive of the second half.
Was it? No, I'm talking about the Texas game where.
The interception?
Yeah, I'm just looking for it. I have no idea when that happened.
I don't remember either. I'm that whole game's kind of a blur.
I just don't remember.
I do remember Sonny Styles running in front of that guy who could have tracked down Jack Sawyer, but that Texas guy just didn't care. He was not running that hard. He kind of pulled up and Sonny kind of shielded him out of the sideline there. But yeah, that guy did not give any kind of effort at all on that play. And that was, like I said, if he tackles Jack Sawyer, man, there's still the ball game to play. But you let him go in the end zone, and that was game over.
Let me see. Was it the first drive of the second half? Hang on a second. I don't know if you guys could hear that. Well, JJ made this is, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not trying to be crazy, but I mean, JJ immediately makes the tackle, but it's right next to him. It's right in the vicinity of him. So, but he gets the tackle on the play, which again is great. Like Marvin, like, and again, we'll break it down. It was literally, it's the first play of the drive, in the first half, and Will throws one, over the middle, gets picked, and JJ, gets the guy on the ground. So I think that's what it is. First drive of the second half. Where is it at? I don't know. I'm trying to find it, but JJ makes the tackle immediately. But it wasn't like he had to like run it down or make play. Now again, he still got him on the ground, which is all that matters. But I don't know. Like I don't know. Like he at least got him on the ground. Like, because I'll show the Marvin play, and again, I don't like to go negative time. I don't really care, but it's just like Marvin just they threw that slant, and he just could not care less. He just let the guy, he let Will Johnson run down to like the 2-yard line, and he just like kind of walked off the field, and that's whatever. But I thought this was at the beginning of the second half, but I could be wrong. First drive of the second half. So it should be coming up right here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, I found it. So again, JJ is like right on this guy. Like Will, and again, people say, oh, Will Howard threw an interception, but like when you watch the tape, like, is this really Will's fault? I don't think so. No, I could be wrong. Maybe Kirk's stupid and dumb. Like, you guys can say whatever you want about me, but here, our tight end is trying to hang in there. He's doing the best he can, but he loses this guy late. Guy makes a nice little move, and he affects Will's throw. Will can't follow through, so he kind of short arms it and doesn't get any zip on it, and can't throw it where he wants to throw it. So sails it, and here's the best freshman in the country, getting the tackle and getting the guy on the ground. So again, JJ's, the difference is like JJ's right here. But he gets the guy on the ground, which again, this is just part of football. Sometimes, you set up to make a pass, and so, but I mean, do I give JJ credit for getting the guy on the ground? Of course. I think that's important when you throw a pick to, somebody who's, got some speed, like you better get a guy on the ground, because that's the problem with when you have, you throw it to, some of these guys that are really, really, fast. I mean, like, the only guys that can get them down are the skill guys. Usually, like the linemen, unless there's some sort of a screwed up angle or some sort of a screwed up something, the linemen aren't going to be able to get them down on the ground. There's just too much speed on the field. So, but yeah, I don't know if I have that Marvin one. But yeah, I don't think it really matters. But I was going to see if I had it, but it just. It was just a disappointing effort. Like, again, I'm not trying to pile on Marvin. I don't really care at this point. I mean, he obviously is a great player, and he's going to have a great career in the NFL. But yeah, it was just disappointing at that moment in time. Let's see where we're at. Nevada, big week coming up. Got a couple weeks before spring ball. What are you looking forward to hearing about? Because I imagine that they're going to let these coaches become available at some point. So we'll hear from Matt Patricia and those guys. Anything that you're looking forward to learning?
Yeah, no, I'm interested just to kind of hear Matt's kind of approach, and we haven't really heard from him since he got the job, and just kind of what's his philosophy, and how forthcoming he's going to be. I mean, sure, he'll be well versed in coach speak like most of them are, but sometimes if you pay attention, you kind of pick up little things or little tells about how they're going to be approaching things. But over the next 2 weeks, I want to hear more about how kids are looking in winter conditioning, the testing, which guys are kind of assuming those leadership roles, who's stepping up, and we talked about it last night. But you're going to be hearing more about Julian Sand in the future, because he is the guy. He is the guy. He is the man, and he's awfully good, and starting to take a leadership role, kind of losing some of that California cool, kind of stepping up. And it's hard. It's hard for those younger guys to lead. You know yourself. When you were a younger player at Ohio State, you kind of felt like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you can kind of speak for it. But I got the impression from you that when you were younger, you kind of felt like you should be seen and not heard as much. And when you got older, you felt more comfortable in kind of a leadership role. And I think for a guy like Julian, I mean, he's a young guy, but you're the quarterback and you got to be the leader. So it's it's tough for those guys to kind of do it. Easier for a guy like Will Howard, who's an older guy, played 40 games already before he came to Ohio State. But Julian's a youngster, but he's got to be the heart and soul of the team and be the leader of the team. How have you seen quarterbacks manage that role, and what do you think what do you think is important for him to do to kind of be seen as a leader on the team?
Well, I mean, I think you have to disregard your age, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, I know Julian's only a second year sophomore, but like, he got to be a leader, and that's something where I think that the lack of experience or the thought that he's still in a competition, like, am I allowed to be a leader when I'm still competing with like a keynotes, whatever? Um, how does he handle that? Is he a guy that's going to be, timid or scared to call guys out, even though he's got zero career starts? Because that's the thing. It's hard to really kind of grab it by the horns when you've never started a game here and you've never produced anything here. But you got to kind of fake it till you make it. I mean, that's kind of where he's got to be at, and he's got to be confident. He's got to own it, and he's got to get after it and cut it loose. Because again, you get again, I'm not going to be Eminem here, but you get like one shot, you get one opportunity, and this is it's a cold world. It's a real cold world in the world of quarterbacks and in the world of college football. And I mean, you've got a real short window to prove that you can do it. Because the one thing I learned about watching this combine, when you watch all these guys that were throwing, all these top guys, all these guys that were the dudes or whatever, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Shador Sanders, Cam Ward, Will Howard, all those guys, they're all transfers. Kyle McCord, literally. I mean, it was insane. Like, it was like, I don't even know who the highest rated one was that was recruited by his original school, that stuck all the way through and is still like, projected to be a high end pick. Because none of the top, I mean, if the top three are, Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, and then Jackson Dart, then Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, like in whatever order, they're all transfers. So, a lot of those guys were probably projected to be stars as young players at the schools they were at. And then something happened, somebody else showed up, coaching change, coordinator change, whatever. And they moved. So, I mean, this is, it's real fluid, but I think Julian he's got the stuff. And again, the guys I talk to that I really trust when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks are guys that say that he's the dude, he's the guy. He's really hard to go against. He's really sharp. And like I always talk about, like when you're at Ohio State, like you don't need to be He-Man. You don't need to be some outer worldly mutant being to be a good quarterback here. Like all you got to do is throw the ball to JJ, hand the ball to James Peoples, throw it to Max Clare, throw it or hand it to Ennis, throw it to Carnell Tate. Like it's not, stay in, behind your gigantic, talented, well-skilled offensive line. This isn't like this is like you're moving to a well-oiled settlement that's really top tier, top notch. This is like you're moving to like Dubai or something. You're not the pilgrims getting off the Mayflower at Plymouth Rock where there's nothing but trees and disease and everything else and people trying to kill you there. Like it's a different world. So Julian Sayin has got all the talent in the world. He knows the offense. Again, I think it's a huge benefit to him that Brian Hartline got promoted as coordinator because the offense will be exactly the same. Not exactly the same. Brian will change some stuff, and I'm sure Tyler Bowen will put a little stuff in there, but like the terminology will be the same as it was last year. If you get a new coordinator, things can change pretty dramatically. If there's some sort of a whitewashing of the staff, but the staffs are largely the same. I mean, obviously we swapped out the coordinators, but and we got a new line coach, but a lot of the guys are for a national championship season. This is about as much continuity as I think you could expect. So, hey, good on it. And again, I love the direction that the team is headed. All right, Nevada, let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts?
Just combine done, and looking forward to the pro day for Ohio State so the players can can state the case. That's going to be a fun one. That's going to be a fun one. We're going to be a lot of guys running that day, and it'll be interesting to see, who runs, how fast they run, what they do. But Ohio State's really going to have a heck of a presence at the NFL draft this year, and again, it's a celebration of this great 2024 national champion team, and really a gigantic advertisement for Ohio State for other recruits and for other portal kids. So don't think that stuff doesn't matter, because all those kids are looking at, how do I develop and how do I get to the next league? And the NFL draft is the ultimate litmus test, because that's not opinion. That's people paying real money to do it. And Ohio State's going to be top of the class this year, and that's can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys kicking it with us on your Sunday. Again, I am rounding the corner, feeling much better than I have the last few days, so I feel great now. So, but I appreciate you guys. If you guys enjoy this, again, an easy way to help us out in a big way, a huge way, is to please follow us on Apple Podcasts. We've been growing that. It's been showing up. Easy thing to do. And it's something that can really help us out. So, again, I just appreciate you guys so much. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Get ready to start this week off running the right way. And I'm really excited to see what happens this week. So I think it's going to be a huge week for Ohio State football. So that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. Talk to you guys tomorrow night, 7:10. See you guys then. You guys have a great night. Go Bucks.